Yo guys, it's Bask, and today I want to show you how to make piano house like the pros.
Like the pros, there's nothing to it. Come on, Vogue. Let your body groove to the music. Hey, hey.
So piano house consists of a kick, clap, hats, percussion, FX, bass, and of course, the piano. This entire rework was inspired solely off this piano riff in the original Madonna track. And of course, the vocal.
Come on, Vogue. Vogue. Let your body go with the flow. You know you can do it.
So for the processing of the piano, we have an OTT for multi-band compression, a decapitator to saturate the pianos, an echo board for some delay, a reverb, a filter for the build-ups and breakdowns, a reverb and delay plugin for the build-ups, an ozone imager for stereo width, and an EQ to finally get rid of the low end and some of the high end. And lastly, a kickstart to sidechain the piano to the kick and the bass. The most important element of any dance track is always the kick, so I took the time to make sure I chose the right kick specifically for this track. So for the bass line, I followed the root notes of the piano. Pro tip, if you want your bass to sound better, I would always recommend slightly moving the notes off grid, as this will improve the overall groove of the track. Here's how it sounds with the kick. So for the processing of the bass, I kept it rather simple. I started with an EQ to remove some of the high end, then a decapitator to further saturate the bass, then another EQ to remove some of the high end after the saturation, and finally some sidechain so the kick doesn't clash with the bass. So for my claps, I always like to layer them so they all have their own role and cover each part of the stereo spectrum. For the percussion, I found a couple samples that worked quite well together. I chopped some of them up and made some of my own loops and added some extra loops and clave hits just to further increase the groove. So I usually spend a bit more time on my drum processing just to make sure that my drums hit exactly how I want them to. So firstly, I have an EQ to cut out some of the low end. Then I have an OTT to slightly boost some of the high end and compress it slightly. Then I use the decapitator to slightly boost it even more and saturate the drums altogether. This Drum Fattener 1 preset is one of my favorites, and I use it throughout all my tracks. I then use this Flash VST plugin, which is essentially a free transient designer, which helps make your drums shorter and punch more through the mix. I then added a Shaper Box plugin with the Drive preset. I saw this from a James Hype tutorial video, and I highly recommend it for everyone to use it. This essentially boosts from 10k Hz onwards all your drums and all your high end in the entire mix, and it makes your track much more bright. And lastly, another EQ to cut out some of the harshness and some of the low end that the decapitator created. For build-ups, I would always recommend looping a certain word, phrase, or synth. This will help increase the tension and as well as the impact on the drop.
Strike the pose, there's nothing to it. Strike the pose, there's nothing to it. Strike the pose, 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 strike the pose. Strike the pose, there's nothing to it.
Another cool trick that I've learned from build-ups is to decrease the pitch of the snare at the very end of the build-up. So now that I've covered everything, let's see how it sounds like all together.
Strike the pose, there's nothing to it. 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 Strike the pose, 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 strike the pose. Strike the pose, there's nothing to it. Come on, Vogue. Let your body groove to the music. Hey, hey, hey. Come on, Vogue. Let your body go with the flow. You know you can do it.
Thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and let me know in the comments if you want to see more track breakdowns.